Iraqi dinar today. Latest news. A monumental, yet often overlooked, financial shift is subtly gathering momentum beneath the surface of global markets, captivating the attention of high-level financial intelligence networks and serious currency analysis circles across the globe. This growing sentiment is not confined to the usual speculative fringes that often surround exotic currencies. Instead, its energy is emanating from sophisticated private investor groups and banking executive reports that point to a definitive trend. The spotlight has focused intensely on the Vietnamese Dong, a currency once dismissed as being of minimal worth, which is now the central focus of what many knowledgeable insiders are referring to as the potential revaluation event of this current decade. The conversation surrounding the Dong is no longer sustained merely by baseless rumors, hopeful speculation, or the general circulation of wishful thinking across online forums and social media. It is now demonstrably anchored in a verified and consistent pattern of robust economic progress within Vietnam, coupled with notable adjustments to international policy frameworks and corroborated intelligence originating directly from banking executives. With privileged access to restricted interbank meetings and confidential internal documents, the perception of those who hold the Dong has fundamentally changed in a way that signals a profound shift in market readiness. Those holding significant amounts of the Vietnamese currency are no longer viewed as peripheral participants engaging in a long-shot gamble. Instead, many are preparing with a palpable sense of seriousness for what they believe is an impending, faltering financial transition. As anticipation for a significant revaluation event swells through the middle of 2025, a singular and critical factor is emerging as the dividing line between the casual banknote holder and the strategically prepared investor. This essential element is formal registration within the structured financial system. Historically, the simple act of possessing the physical paper currency was believed to be the complete requirement for participation in any future exchange. However, this is no longer the case in the modern financial and regulatory landscape. Without having formally secured a position through the correct institutional bank portals, licensed and verified currency dealers, or authenticated private channels, investors now face the very real risk of losing their place in the structured, regulated redemption process entirely. Even if the rate does change, the core question has fundamentally shifted from being solely about whether a revaluation event might take place to the far more urgent and immediate question of whether an individual will be granted permission to participate when the event actually occurs. Reports suggest that the earliest appointment blocks for potential future redemption events are being rapidly filled, long before any form of public announcement is made. Private alerts concerning scheduling, protocol, and the required compliance documentation continue to circulate strictly within closed financial networks. Crucially, lists for formal, preemptive registration are being quietly and discreetly assembled behind the scenes by major financial institutions, with an eye toward anticipating and managing the massive potential volume. If your holdings include the Vietnamese Dong, the Iraqi Dinar, or the Zimbabwe ZIM currency, understanding this new framework and its rigorous requirements is absolutely essential for effective preparation. It is vital to know precisely where legitimate registration is occurring, and to recognize why the timing of your action has become more critical than ever before to secure a priority position. In previous older speculative currency cycles, particularly those involving the Iraqi dinar and the former Zimbabwean dollar, there was a widespread but often incorrect conviction that physical possession of the banknotes was, in itself, the only guaranteed ticket to participation. The underlying assumption was straightforward and simple. Once the rate changes, you would merely walk into any local bank branch and exchange your currency with ease and without issue. This simplistic assumption, however, fails to account for the modern environment. The contemporary financial and regulatory landscape of 2025 operates under an entirely different, far stricter, digitally enforced compliance structure. Contemporary international banking systems, especially within the United States, are rigorously regulated under complex anti-money laundering AML and Know Your Client KYC protocols. These are not mere suggestions. They are strictly applied compliance mandates for any large foreign currency redemption event, demanding a level of scrutiny far beyond what existed in past decades. According to highly detailed information shared by consultants who were formerly affiliated with top-tier financial institutions like Citibank, HSBC, and other major U.S. banking establishments, advanced registration is now a mandatory requirement for banks to proceed. This is not for mere administrative convenience or streamlined processing. It is absolutely essential for managing regulatory compliance, meticulously tracing the origin of the transaction, and thoroughly vetting the participants long before any exchange of money takes place, thereby protecting the institutions. This fundamental shift in procedure is entirely about institutional security, liability, and the mandated prevention of illicit financial activity. Furthermore, the rumored early redemption events, which are believed to be linked to centers coordinated with the U.S. Treasury Department, appear to be strictly limited to those individuals who have been verified, fully documented, and entered into the official systems. Simply holding the currency in isolation is no longer sufficient to guarantee access to potentially premium redemption rates or the vital early scheduling appointments. Without the required completed registration and pre-verification, there is a significant risk of being relegated to the lowest priority tiers or being forced to wait for public walk-in phases, which are widely anticipated to offer substantially less favorable outcomes, including standard published rates rather than contractual ones. The redemption structure that is now being modeled and put into place is demonstrably tiered, heavily regulated, completely documented, and driven entirely by the necessity of compliance with both domestic and international banking laws. The stark reality within this new framework is that if you have not been proactively registered and your documentation pre-screened, you will almost certainly not be included in the priority access phases, regardless of the volume of your holdings. Vietnam's economic trajectory as it progresses toward 2025 represents one of the nation's most robust and promising periods in its modern history, lending fundamental weight to the revaluation conversation beyond mere speculation. Years of consistent, stable governance, highly effective export-centric trade policies, and carefully managed, balanced monetary strategies have cumulatively produced truly significant and verifiable economic progress. Major financial analysts from influential institutions, including Deutsche Bank and the respected Global Currency Institute, have publicly reported that Vietnam's robust foreign reserves, its impressive gross domestic product (GDP) expansion, and its burgeoning global trade strength collectively position the Dong as a currency that is fundamentally undervalued by current market mechanisms. Thomas Keating, a highly regarded and leading strategist focused on emerging markets, recently articulated in his internal reports that Vietnam now exhibits every single hallmark of a national currency that is nearing a critical realignment of its value to more accurately reflect its economic power. However, the conversation extends far beyond simply analyzing raw economic data, which only provides a macro perspective on the situation. Confidential reports have strongly suggested that officials from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and senior financial leaders across Southeast Asia have held numerous private discussions concerning monetary modernization, deep digital integration of the financial system, and the possibility of significant foreign exchange rate adjustments. There is compelling, strong circumstantial evidence suggesting that certain U.S.-based banks are already actively modeling multiple Dong rate scenarios internally, a powerful and clear indicator of serious institutional preparation for a potential change. Concurrently, Vietnam's public exploration of launching a issued digital currency further increases the strong likelihood that a recalibration of the value of the physical banknotes will be both necessary and imminent to harmonize the old and new financial systems. These powerful economic, critical political, and urgent regulatory signals are all now converging at a remarkably rapid pace, creating an environment that is perfectly ripe for change in the foreign exchange market. For investors situated within the United States, this convergence of signals has already translated into concrete action within closed circles. Verified licensed currency dealers are reporting a dramatic and sustained increase in the volume of Dong purchases being logged into their compliance systems. Furthermore, the early appointment systems for future redemption are quietly beginning to activate for those who have completed their pre-registration. What was once dismissed as a highly unlikely speculative event now appears both plausible and potentially imminent within the financial landscape. To navigate a future revaluation event successfully and securely, holders of the Dong must immediately shift their focus from the simple ownership of the paper to the actual verified pathways that are designed to provide legitimate, regulated access to the redemption process. The contemporary redemption systems operate entirely within an extremely strict digital-first environment. The process of being correctly and legitimately entered into the pre-verification channels will be the deciding factor in whether an investor receives early priority access or is instead left to wait for the general public phases, which may offer less competitive rates. There are 4 recognized distinct routes that currently dominate discussions among well-informed participants and compliance officers. The first is bank portal pre-registration within the largest U.S. institutions, specifically including Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America. It is crucial to understand that these specific bank copyrighted registration programs are never advertised publicly or through mainstream media channels, underscoring their exclusivity and necessity for security. These exclusive portals only become accessible through highly secure invitations, encrypted personal emails, or by means of direct, confidential contact with an existing banking relationship manager. Access to these institutional portals typically requires the investor to have an established high-level relationship, such as existing trust accounts, sophisticated business accounts, or a documented private banking profile. These portals are meticulously designed to collect necessary identity documents, verify the compliance status of the holder, and formally lock in participants for advanced scheduling. Without successfully completing this crucial pre-verification step, accessing the early redemption phases is deemed virtually impossible in the current modeled structure, which prioritizes existing client relationships and compliance integrity above all else. The second recognized pathway involves licensed currency dealer registries. Reputable, transparent dealers, those firms with clear federal oversight and verifiable credentials, are actively onboarding Dong holders into protected, secure alert and registration systems, thereby creating a verifiable paper trail for all transactions. Through these secure dealer portals, clients are required to submit their identification, all original purchase documentation, and the precise currency details for logging into the system. These licensed dealers play a vital role by maintaining the compliance records that the major banks will later require as part of the redemption process when the exchange takes place. Therefore, choosing a legitimate and transparent dealer is absolutely essential for an investor's protection and future access, and due diligence is paramount. Investors are strictly cautioned never to provide sensitive information to unverified sellers, anonymous resellers, or suspicious, unverified websites, as this introduces severe compliance and security risks that could jeopardize the entire transaction. The third pathway is the rumored existence of invitation. Only private groups operating on closed platforms such as Telegram, WhatsApp, or encrypted email ecosystems These platforms claim to offer access to inside information and potential registration slots. While it is rumored that a very small number of these groups may possess legitimate communication channels connected to recognized institutions, the vast majority carry significant inherent risks due to lack of verifiable oversight. Some of these groups make grand claims offering access to private portals, guaranteed appointment codes, or highly preferential outcomes. The strict warning remains: never share sensitive data, such as currency serial numbers, personal identification, or banking information, with any unverified groups, as this is a major security hazard. If an investor encounters such offers, they must seek immediate verification from trusted legal professionals or accredited financial advisors to confirm legitimacy and avoid fraud. Authentic high-level private groups are understood to be extremely exclusive and operate under a heavy degree of mandated documentation and non-disclosure agreements, signaling a high barrier to entry. The fourth and final pathway involves the role of U.S. government monitoring systems, including those operated by agencies analogous to the Treasury, the IRS, and FinCEN. These systems are inherently designed to track all large currency movements through automated transaction reports, which is a key part of the modern regulatory structure. It is a certainty that any future redemption exceeding the threshold of $10,000 will trigger mandatory government reporting and scrutiny due to the Bank Secrecy Act and related regulations. Therefore, completing registration through recognized legitimate institutions ensures the legality and protection of the transaction, which is particularly crucial in the event of future audits. Tax liability is another major factor that requires advanced consideration and planning, especially if potential revaluation profits are structured to qualify as capital gains. Early preparation provides essential time to explore sophisticated legal mechanisms, such as establishing trusts, structuring staged payouts, or securing professional advisory guidance from tax experts. Planning for the tax implications is as important as the exchange itself to protect the proceeds. Once a legitimate registration has been successfully completed, the investor's information is formally placed within a tiered scheduling structure. Tier 1 participants, generally comprising large volume holders, long-term private banking clients, or the very earliest registrants, are typically granted the first access and may be offered the potential for fixed contract rates before any major market fluctuations occur, providing a degree of certainty. Tier 2 constitutes the mid-priority group, receiving secured access shortly after the first tier, with rates that are expected to remain highly competitive and favorable compared to general market rates. Tier 3, the public phase, is anticipated to include the general walk-in appointments and will operate on the standard prevailing foreign exchange-based pricing, which may be less advantageous than the contract rates offered to the priority tiers. Confirmation messages for appointments will generally include a detailed list of required documents, the precise appointment time, and crucial security procedures for the redemption center. Investors should plan to bring their government-issued identification, their organized and verified currency, all original purchase receipts, and any paperwork that clearly supports the legal ownership of the funds to ensure a smooth, one-time transaction. The redemption centers are expected to utilize the most modern authentication tools and will operate on strict, non-negotiable appointment windows. Punctuality and complete documentation will be paramount to success, as any delay or missing item could result in the appointment being forfeited and the participant losing their priority slot. A significant and important aspect of this modeled framework is that Dong registration is expected to also benefit holders of the Iraqi Dinar and the Zimbabwe ZAM. It is widely rumored that many banks and redemption networks are consolidating the scheduling for multi-currency appointments, treating them as a related set of high-scrutiny transactions. Therefore, successfully registering and completing the compliance process for the Dong may automatically position the holder for subsequent Dinar or ZIM processing within the same pre-verified system. Updates from U.S. Treasury and IRS systems that reference multi-currency reporting strongly suggest a broader, more coordinated regulatory framework is being prepared for these types of exchanges. If a basket-style redemption structure is ultimately adopted, the Dong registration may effectively serve as the master access point for all three currencies before the final move into the individual redemption phases, streamlining the process significantly for multi-currency holders. It is therefore imperative to immediately evaluate your current state of readiness against this rigorous compliance standard. Ensure your official identification is valid, your original purchase documents are meticulously organized, your linked bank accounts are fully accessible, and your currency inventory is complete and accurately documented. Many of the premium tiers are expected to require signed non-disclosure agreements and DAS to protect the integrity and security of the process. High-value holders are also often arranging for secure transport of their currency with professional security services, recognizing the physical risk involved. Some centers are reportedly considering prioritizing clients who can provide structured financial plans or formal letters of intent for how they plan to utilize their proceeds, demonstrating responsibility and forethought. The next 72 hours or a similar short time frame could become decisive in this speculative timeline, as early access slots are limited and being rapidly assigned. If the Dong revaluation timeline activates as suggested by high-level analysts and quiet institutional communications, only those individuals who are already verified in the system will be able to move forward quickly and efficiently. Others will likely be delayed or redirected to the less favorable public rates, potentially missing the best opportunity. Holding the physical currency without proper registration is effectively equivalent to owning the vault key without the essential access code required to use it. The physical object is useless without the digital permission. Ultimately, preparation, documentation, and compliance are the only factors that will determine your priority position in the queue, not merely hopeful anticipation of an event. As noted, Dong registration may also be the key that unlocks your path for Dinar and ZIM processing in a streamlined manner. Regardless of whether your holdings are modest or extensive, your potential future financial outcome may depend entirely on the action you take now to secure your compliance status, not on what you plan to do later when a public announcement is made. Secure your access, complete your registration through legitimate channels, and position yourself strategically before the early redemption windows officially begin to close, which could happen without public notice.